In 1984, a man named Ronald Cotton was sentenced to life in prison for a rape he didn't commit. The victim looked him dead in the eye and said she was certain, absolutely certain. She had studied his face during the attack, specifically so she'd never forget it. 11 years later, DNA evidence proved she was wrong, completely wrong. She wasn't lying. She wasn't confused. She remembered his face perfectly. The problem is that the face she remembered had quietly become someone else's. Here's what should scare you. This happens to your memories too. Right now, every memory you have works nothing like a recording. It isn't stored once and then played back exactly. Every single time you remember something, your brain pulls that memory out. And while it's out, it becomes soft, unstable, editable. Then your brain saves it again, slightly different than before. Scientists call this reconsolidation. Think of your memory less like a video file. Think of it more like a document that reopens every time you read it, and quietly autosaves whatever small changes crept in while you were looking. You've read your own memories thousands of times, which means you've rewritten them thousands of times, and you never noticed, because each edit is invisible from the inside. This isn't a new discovery. Scientists suspected it as early as 1932. A psychologist named Frederick Bartlett ran a strange experiment. He told people a short, unusual folk story, then asked them to retell it. Not once, over weeks, then months, then years. Every single retelling drifted further from the original. Strange details vanished. Familiar details appeared that were never there at all. People weren't forgetting the story. They were quietly rebuilding it, filling gaps with whatever made the most sense to them personally. And every one of them was completely convinced they remembered it right. Bartlett had found the pattern, but nobody yet understood why it happened. That answer came decades later from a psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus. In the 1990s, she ran an experiment that should genuinely unsettle you. She told adult participants 4 short stories from their own childhood. 3 of the stories were true, given by their own families. The 4th one was completely invented. Getting lost in a shopping mall as a child. It never happened. Not once. Loftus made the whole thing up. About a quarter of the participants didn't just believe the fake memory. They elaborated on it, added their own details, described how frightened they'd felt. One person even remembered the exact color of the stranger's flannel shirt who helped them, a shirt that belonged to nobody. Because the moment never existed. Their brains hadn't just accepted a suggestion, they had built a fully textured emotional memory out of nothing at all. And here's the part that should really bother you. From the inside, a false memory feels exactly the same as a real one. There is no internal warning label, no asterisk, no dimmer glow. Confidence and accuracy turned out to have almost nothing to do with each other. You can be 100% sure and 100% wrong at the same time about the exact same memory. You've probably already lived through a version of this yourself. Millions of people are certain the Berenstain Bears was once spelled differently. They remember it clearly. They'd argue with you about it. It was never spelled that way, not in a single printing, ever. Psychologists call this the Mandela effect, after a similar shared false memory about Nelson Mandela's death. Thousands of unrelated strangers, all confidently remembering the same thing wrong, which raises an uncomfortable question. If that many people can share a false memory, what does that say about the memories you're completely sure of, alone, with no one to check against? Advertising companies have known about this glitch for decades, and they use it on purpose. There's a term for it, the mere exposure effect. The more you see something, even without noticing, the more familiar it starts to feel. Familiar quietly gets filed away as trustworthy, even likable. That's why brands repeat the same jingle for 30 years straight. Not because it's catchy, because repetition manufactures the feeling of nostalgia. Some of your favorite childhood memories of a product might barely be childhood memories at all. In one famous study, researchers showed people a fake ad claiming Bugs Bunny appeared at Disneyland. Bugs Bunny belongs to a different studio entirely. He has never once been allowed inside that park. Afterward, a large share of participants confidently remembered meeting him there as children. Some even remembered shaking his hand. Marketers don't need to lie to your face. They just need to hand your brain one vivid detail at the right moment. Your own brain does the rest of the work for free. It gets worse when the memory actually matters. In 1986, the Challenger space shuttle exploded on live television. It was the kind of moment people assume they'll remember perfectly, forever. Psychologist Ulrich Neisser asked students the very next day exactly where they were, who they were with, what they were doing, every detail. Then he asked the exact same students again, 2.5 years later. Their new answers barely matched their old ones. Not in small details, in basic facts. One student was certain she heard the news in her dorm room, alone. Her original written account said she heard it in class, surrounded by classmates. When shown her own handwriting, she still didn't believe it. She said, quote, "That's my handwriting, but it's not what happened." Her memory had overwritten her own written evidence, and won. These are called flashbulb memories, vivid, emotional, supposedly permanent. Studies since have found they're actually some of the least reliable memories we form. The intensity of the emotion doesn't protect the memory. If anything, it just makes you more confident in the version you made up. Now take this mechanism and put it somewhere with real consequences. A courtroom, for example, where memory is treated as evidence. The Innocence Project has used DNA evidence to overturn hundreds of wrongful convictions. Eyewitness misidentification played a role in the vast majority of them. Not lying witnesses, not corrupt witnesses, confident, honest, mistaken witnesses. People like Jennifer Thompson, who studied a face specifically to remember it, and still ended up sending the wrong man to prison for over a decade. There's no villain hiding in this story. No one set out to deceive anyone. The system just quietly assumed memory works like a recording, and built enormous decisions on top of an assumption that was simply wrong. This same mechanism runs quietly inside every relationship you have. Two people can live through the exact same argument and walk away remembering it completely differently. Not because one of them is lying. Each brain reconsolidated the moment slightly differently, shaped by how it already felt about the other person. Family stories work the same way. Ask 3 siblings about the same childhood event. You'll often get 3 different versions, each one edited to fit how each sibling sees themselves. This is why some family arguments never actually resolve. Both people are being completely honest. They're just defending 2 different memories. It's also why gaslighting is so effective and so hard to prove from the inside. If someone insists your memory is wrong long enough and confidently enough, your own memory can start reconsolidating around their version instead of yours. Not because you're weak-minded, because this is simply how the system was built to work. So here's the part of this story that might actually change your mind about it. The same mechanism that makes memory unreliable also makes it fixable. In the early 2000s, a scientist named Alain Brunet had an idea. If memories become soft and editable every time they're recalled, then that reopened window might be a chance to change them on purpose. He worked with people suffering from severe trauma, car accidents, combat, assault. He asked them to recall the traumatic memory out loud, in detail. While the memory was open, soft, and unstable, he gave them a medication that blocked the stress chemicals from resaving the fear. The memory itself didn't disappear. The facts stayed exactly the same. But the terror wrapped around it, the part that used to hijack their whole body, quietly faded, session after session, almost like editing a document. A similar approach, called EMDR, works on the same basic principle, without any medication at all. Patients recall the traumatic memory while following a rhythmic movement. Nobody is fully certain why the eye movement helps, but across dozens of clinical trials, it's shown real, measurable results. Health organizations now list it as a recommended treatment for post-traumatic stress. Some studies report that most single trauma patients no longer meet the clinical criteria after just a few sessions. Not because the traumatic event stopped happening, it can't, the past doesn't change. But the memory of it can be quietly, safely rebuilt. People could finally remember the worst day of their life, without their body reacting like it was happening again, right now. The same flaw that convicted an innocent man was quietly healing trauma survivors. It was never really a flaw at all, just a mechanism with 2 very different uses. So step back and look at what you're actually made of. Your childhood, your first heartbreak, your best day, your worst one. None of them are fixed. None of them are finished. Every one of them has already been quietly edited, dozens or hundreds of times, by you, without asking your permission, without telling you it happened. You are not a video archive of your own life. You are the author, quietly revising the manuscript every single time you open it. Which means the painful chapters were never permanently carved in stone. They're written in something closer to wet ink, still capable of moving. That should feel less like losing your past, and more like never fully losing the ability to grow past it. So the next time an old memory surfaces, uninvited, in the middle of your day, remember that the moment you're remembering it, it's already becoming something slightly new. Not a flaw in the system working exactly as it always has. You were never trapped by your past, because your past was never actually finished.